the record
Cool.
button and it says recording, so I assume that's what it's doing.
Hello, world.
Hello, exactly. Okay, so I'm here with Nathan Foster, and I recently compared interviewing to a kind of a game, and you need to learn the rules of the game and learn what the different strategies are to get better at it. And Nathan reached out to me as someone with a lot of experience playing this game, and offered to share some of his insights and experience. So thanks for talking with me today, Nathan.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I wouldn't say I have like a whole lot of experience. I'm definitely a lifelong learner. I still have lots of things to learn, but I'm definitely very passionate and just driven to learn stuff. So I think that in and of itself takes someone's career in this field a very long way. Is when, especially from the interviewing side of view, where interviewers, they're looking for people who are genuinely passionate about what they do. Because you probably, like, try to think about it on their side, right? You probably wouldn't want someone to join your team, your band, right,
Mhm.
if they're not really passionate about what they're going to be doing, because they'll probably get burnt out maybe in a few months.
So
So
what's a way? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people will say that they're passionate and say they have a passion for learning. But if everyone is saying that, then how do you know who actually does?
yeah,
Can you share how you basically demonstrated
yeah.
that you do?
Yeah, so kind of like we spoke to it a little bit before we started recording,
Yeah.
and I guess it'll be a good a way to just give a little bit more about my background. So before I was going to school, I was making like video games and like C++. I used some like graphics libraries like SFML, Open Frameworks, dabbled little bit with Unreal Engine and also Unity. But when I went to school, we started learning C++ initially, which I was familiar with, and um, and I went to De Anza first, which is a really nice community college.
Mm.
And I transferred to San Jose State, and that's when I really started going into web development. But there's this natural transition from that front end side of things, making video games, to web development, and I just like fell in love with it. It was amazing. And so I really just dove in deep. So like even outside of school, like I was doing side projects, staying up to like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, doing some like just learning as much as I can. And I first learned like Ruby on Rails, but then once I learned React, it was a whole another like layer of passion that overcame me. So it's amazing. And so yeah, so I graduated at San Jose State with a degree in software engineering. And then my first job technically after college would be with Accenture, but I was in like a back end more type of role, and I liked it and I learned a lot. But I was really passionate. I fell in love with React so much, so I really chased that. And so my next gig was with where I'm at right now with eScreen Logic, and I was able to get like a senior like lead front end engineer position. I've been really enjoying it there ever since.
Okay, so did you actually? I mean, was it a big struggle interview? Like, did you have to interview a
Yeah,
lot to? Because
yeah. I
because
skipped
kind
a
of
lot
the
of
way
steps
you're
there. Yeah.
sharing it, it
Oh
makes it
yeah.
sound like it was just great.
Sorry.
It
Yeah.
was wonderful.
I kind of like painted this Disney like perfect scenario, but there was a lot of interviews that I had to go through to be able to eventually land my job with the eScreen Logic right now. Because I was first living in the Bay Area, right? I was living in San Jose, and there's a lot of opportunity there, but I'm sure you've seen this, and I think a lot of people who are trying to get into this field are experiencing this, where companies will say that they were looking for an entry-level position, but they want like 3 years of experience, right? They want to pay someone who's like an intern or entry level, but expect like 3-4 years of experience, which is crazy, right? So I saw a lot of that just like when I was going through Indeed or Dice or even LinkedIn. Those are like the three main platforms that I use. That's been helpful. I actually got my job with eScreen Logic through Indeed. So
Really?
I would
Okay.
definitely recommend not just using LinkedIn, but yeah, using definitely Indeed. When you use Dice, you kind of get a little bit more cold calls, but and a lot of them seem to be a lot of contract or contract to hire positions, but it's very widely used. So But definitely at least LinkedIn and Indeed is what I would recommend people building their professional profiles on. Um, but yeah, I mean, I went through, I don't know, I lost count, but I went through several interviews, and the thing that was nice is that every single interview you learn something new, right? So I
Right.
remember one time I got the feedback where I was very technically sound. They had full confidence that I'd be a great developer, but and I was passionate about the technology, so I checked like all these boxes. But the one thing I didn't check was I wasn't passionate about the company enough,
Oh,
and that's a big thing,
interesting.
right? And I really took that to heart, and I was like, okay, that's totally understandable, right? So a company, you're joining, you're not really just joining a job, kind of like what we spoke to before. We're joining an organization, we're joining this network and people, and so you wouldn't want someone to join your team that's not interested, or at least somewhat interested in you, right? So after that, I really made it a point to do some research, go to the company's website, follow them on LinkedIn, see what type of posts, go to like the hiring managers, see what they're talking about, you know. And then I remember this one time where I interviewed for a company, I found something specifically that the CEO said about the company, and it was like a big vision and initiative that they're trying to do. And I spoke to that in the interviewing process, and that really impressed them. So things like that go a long way.
So that's
and
probably
and it was genuine too. Like
yeah.
I genuinely was interested in what they were doing. So that's another key part to it too.
Right. So that's probably why recruiters or different people ask, what are you looking for in a company? Because that is a factor. Even though, like, when you're first breaking into the industry, you can't really be picky, and you kind of have the mentality like, well, I have some things that I am looking for in a company, but I'm not going to be picky. Um, and but in a certain sense, if companies are looking for someone who's going to be passionate about who's not just going to get their foot in the door and then just leave right away,
Yep, yep,
uh,
yep.
which I think a lot of people trying to break in kind of have that mentality. Speaking for myself, at least. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's really interesting to point out that that might have been the reason that you didn't get that first interview. That's interesting.
hmm And it's also important to realize, and I know this is hard to do at times, is not to take it personally. It's very easy to get discouraged when you're interviewing, but it's kind of like what you spoke to in your video, where like it's a business decision, right? Like they're trying to do what's best for the company, and they only have like an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour window to learn as much as you as possible, and to see if they can envision you being a part of their organization. And I think that's another really key part. And I want to give a shout out to a person. His name is Andrew La Sabita, and he's on LinkedIn. He also has a YouTube channel, but he's a professional. He gives the best advice to advance your career. He has hundreds of videos of how to do your job search, how to the interviewing process, how to negotiate before and after the interview, how to negotiate when you we call it a promotion. He does all this amazing stuff, and I have a document that I'll send to you after our video that has all these links and some of the notes that I kind of typed up.
Great.
But I can't recommend him enough. He is amazing, and he has helped me a lot, accelerating my career and just being better in the interviewing process, and also more confident. Um,
Right. So, what are some other things that you've learned through the interview? You said you went through several interviews, right? And
mhm.
you learned something new every time. What are some other experiences you had? Obviously, I mean, it doesn't seem like you got too discouraged from interview to interview. Did you ever meet with discouragement, or did you always kind of see it as like a game and I'll get better at it? And you know,
Um, yeah, I mean, I didn't get really low, but there were a few of them where I was like, man, it just felt right. I felt like I was going to get it. And then you kind of start, I think those times where it really hurts is when you really in your head think you got it. And like,
mm,
you start planning and making plans for that opportunity. And so you set up your expectations, right? And then when they're not met, that's when it really hurts. So I try not, I think that's part of it, is like, don't try setting your expectations too high, like after you've done the interview, and don't start like making plans, like buying a house or something like that, like if you were going to relocate or something like that. Because that's happened to me before. Like I remember at one point we were looking at jobs maybe in North Carolina, and like, oh man, let's check out the houses out there, and the cost for
yeah,
living is a lot different, and stuff like that. And like, and it doesn't work out and you're like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, and also if you're a people person and you have a really great interviewing experience with the people and you're excited to work with them too,
Yep,
and
yep.
you do get excited about the product or the project you'd be working on and you start getting hyped up for that. I obviously have this problem where I start imagining like and then that's probably why it hits me so hard when the
Yeah.
rejection does come. Yeah.
And it's a good thing, right? It means that you care, that you're invested, and so that those are all good signs. But yeah, like there's like, I guess, coping strategies or like ways to mitigate it, I guess, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
um but I guess like we to kind of so what I've seen is like I guess the first steps like in the interviewing process is you first initially will get like contact with like a recruiter. That
Mm-hmm.
can either be like HR, so someone who actually is a part of the company, who's internal, who's looking. But from what I've seen, a lot of people tend to hire agencies, like um,
Mm, right.
recruiting agencies that help them out with the recruiting efforts, um, because it takes a lot of time and it takes money to do all that. And for a lot of companies, it's worth it just to hire someone else to do it. But there's differences between those two. So usually when you have an HR person who's part of the company, they typically know more about the company, right? Because they work there, they know like the day-to-day there. And I'm just typically, this is not always.
Right.
Um, and then there's always the question that either the HR or the agency recruiter will ask you is about the salary range, right?
That's
And
right.
I think that's
Yeah.
a very interesting question. And Andrew, again, shout out to him, has a few videos, and I again will have links in this document that I'll send you to these videos, where he does a phenomenal job of how to navigate that question.
Oh,
But
that's excellent.
basically, he just says he points out some things. You don't want to go too low, and you don't want to go too high, right? And
Mhm.
so what you basically want to tell him is that that compensation is important to you, but you look at the job offer holistically, and as of right now at this point you don't really have a great idea because you don't know about the benefits, you don't know
You don't
about
have enough information.
the
Yep.
you don't know about the people you're going to be working with, the learning opportunities, etc., right? There's so many things, there's so many variables in a job offer that and then just the salary is just one component of that. And so if you phrase it like that, they typically will always, from 100% for me, they always understand that. Ever since I watched those videos, I started doing that, and they have always understood that.
Mhm.
And he even says to ask them what range they're working with,
That's
right?
exactly that's
Yeah,
it sounds so bad. It sounds like what's
especially
your budgeted
the
rate?
agency ones. Yeah, because the agencies are nice because they're kind of decoupled away from the company, right? And they're of course trying to suit their needs, but it's not as awkward to ask them because
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to help, they're making a profit, right? They're making a commission, but they're also trying to merge both interested parties, are us, the interviewees, and of course the company. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have asked all the agencies that, and 100% of the time they had no problems telling me what the range that they were working with. So
Right.
thank you, Andrew, for that advice, because that never occurred to me before I had watched his videos. So, and that helps out a lot.
Right.
Uh,
And that, I mean, that's something like my husband used to deal with antiques, like be an antique dealer. And it was always this question, like, nobody wants to say the first number, you know? It's like,
yeah,
who goes first? Because if you're selling something, they don't want to say too high a number and you don't want to say too low a number, and and the negotiation in between. So it's the same with like the interviewing or the with jobs.
yeah,
But that's the thing, is that companies have a budgeted range and they want to know if your asking price is even going to be in that range at all.
yeah,
You might, if you're a senior developer, you might be asking too much. Junior might be, or you know what I mean.
yeah. No,
So
no, and that's true. And something that Andrew also has pointed out, because he worked in the industry for, I think it was like over 20 years. Like he was like hiring executives, and like he has a lot of experience just in this recruitment space. And he said a lot of the time companies are willing to pay you more. So what he like really does with his videos is he tries to help you stack your cards as high as possible before you have that conversation, because it's easier to have that conversation once you sell yourself and you stack your cards really high. and then you have that conversation. But if you have that conversation, you give a number way too early, then it messes like the whole
Then
negotiation
it's
thing.
done. You've already given a number. It's
Exactly.
done. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, something I mean, you have a CS degree. You went to college. You got to work on all these side projects and stay up till 2 a.m. and all these things.
Yeah.
Um, now,
And
a
have a
lot
wife
of,
and kids.
and what?
And have a wife and kids while doing that.
You do too. Okay, all right, great. So you stayed up to 2 a.m. with a wife and kids in
Yeah,
the house.
that was crazy.
Actually, my
Not
husband does
healthy,
the same thing.
probably, but
That's the only time it's quiet, right? The middle of
yep.
the night. So there you go. But a lot of people now are trying to break into tech, like boot camp grads, or just trying to do it quickly, and having that pressure, especially if you went to boot camp and have like this debt hanging over you and the pressure to get a job like really quickly. Pressure is killer in interviews, I've noticed. You know, I mean, it's stressful enough just being on the spot without having the pressure of, oh my goodness, I need a job like right now. um, so yeah, that kind of changes the game a little bit for a lot of people, just not being able to hold it lightly and feeling like this next one has to be the one, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think, I mean, it's a skill. Interviewing is like a skill. So like I've been watching also your video of you doing the live code, the code challenges. Is that what you call it? Yeah. And
Love
I think that's great. I think that's perfect. You're putting yourself out there. You're learning, and I really enjoy it. But as you do more and more of those code challenges, you just get naturally better, right? It's just like any skill. Like if you're going to learn the piano, if you're going to learn how to play soccer or basketball, it takes time and practice, right?
Yes.
And so you just can't give up. You just got to keep doing it, and just what I would recommend after every single like interviewing process you do with a company, always ask for feedback.
Mm,
Always ask for feedback, whether it be through an agency, the HR person, or the hiring manager, whoever I guess you feel comfortable asking. Usually it's the HR, like the hiring manager, that would be willing to give you feedback. But always ask for feedback. Don't take it personally, and then use that, put it into your tool, and like improve on it, and then for your next interview. And that's what it was like for me. Is like I was good. Like I had a good solid like CS background. So like the technical things were I was doing fine at, but it was like the soft social things,
mm.
which I like. I think of myself as an extrovert. Like I love talking with people and stuff like that. But still, even with that, I still needed to learn the specifics to like the game, right? The
Yeah.
interviewing game. So yeah, like I said, it's just a skill that you have to develop, and the more that you
Right.
do of it, the better that you get.
And it is, I mean, in terms of the soft skills, like, I mean, it's almost, it's not enough to be an extrovert or a people person. Otherwise, you know, I'd say that's me as well. But you're interviewing with not a group of people that you're just going to hang out with as friends. You're interviewing with a company. And
Mm-hmm.
so they want to know if you are going to be a good coworker, or like be able to communicate effectively, not uh, and actually get down to work instead of just goofing off all the time. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
because if you're
No,
just
no,
being
yeah,
with friends, then
totally
goofing
true.
off is fine. But if you're trying to get work done, you know, I don't know. So soft skills, there's soft skills and then there's soft skills. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I have definitely learned that soft skills are just as important, if not more important than technical skills. I'm serious. Like I've had some really good friends in school who were like way smarter than me, who had a really great technical background, who actually had more experience, like professional experience even before school than me, who struggled to get jobs afterwards because they just the social and the soft skill aspect of it. But as a friend, like there was no problems there. Like they were funny, like I love them to death, they're awesome. But just in the interviewing process, that's something that just really struggled with.
So
Um,
what soft skills specifically would you say are the most important at an interview to
yeah.
demonstrate?
So I think from what I've seen, companies really just want that you can articulate something. So some of the best interviews that I've had it wasn't me trying to solve some super crazy complex Google question, right? Um, it was, tell me the differences between React and Angular. That question, the way that I articulate that will let them know the depth of knowledge that I have and how much time I've invested in front end technology. Because if I can explain, well, Angular, they use directives, and the way that they iterate over data structures is embedded inside of HTML tags, and React uses JSX, right? It uses JavaScript to render HTML. It also uses um, a virtual DOM, right? Where it, in memory, it stores all the nodes of all your components, and then it knows which ones have changed, and it compares that to the actual DOM, and then it makes the updates just on those nodes in the actual DOM, and that's why it's really fast. There's components, there's functional components, there's hooks now. That's a whole different paradigm shift. You know, all this stuff that I can go on, and I'm obviously passionate about it. When I speak like that, they're like, okay, this guy obviously is passionate about it, right? He's put a lot of time and effort into it. And that's what people are attracted to. They really like that.
Okay.
And then question, like knowing the why. So I know like you made a video on Redux, right?
Right.
And Redux is like the initial learning curve is pretty steep because it's like a whole like little like world in of itself. And it's good like once you learn it, but knowing the why Redux is. Like the reasons why Redux is nice is because it supports high cohesion and loose coupling. It takes the responsibility of state management from a component and puts it somewhere else and manages it somewhere else so that other components can use it, right? And so right there, you're decoupling it. And so you're making components more isolated and more independent and more following the solid, if you're familiar with that principle,
Right.
where they have a single responsibility. And so from the perspective of a component, all it knows is there's some prop that's passed into it from Redux, whether that's a function or an action or some little part of the state from Redux. And that's all that it knows about it. But then its responsibility is to take that stuff and do some other manipulation or whatever it is. And so right there, that follows object-oriented or things that you learn in object-oriented design where you want to abstract out stuff and make it a responsibility of some other thing. And that's what Redux solves, because I'm sure people realize like when you don't have Redux with React specifically is prop drilling. When you have a really high level component parent and you want this little component way down here to have some type of prop, without Redux, you have to keep passing it down.
Exactly. Yeah.
But now they have context, which is actually interesting because Redux actually influenced the development of React.
Yeah.
Like
I love that
it
article.
uses their same structure with context. Yeah.
You're the one who gave me that article, right? I mean,
Yep.
in one of your comments, which I didn't get until just today because, like, on my old posts, like, I don't. LinkedIn doesn't notify me about all the comments anymore. Anyway, I don't know why that happened, but I just randomly looked at an old post and I saw it, and I'm so glad I did because that article is wonderful. And I shared it today, but about just explaining how and when React components render, um,
It's important to know.
yeah, and they actually went into context and Redux as well, because I did read a quote somewhere from someone on the React team that the context API isn't great for high frequency updates, but there was no explanation like why. Well, why not? Why not? But that article kind of broke it down, so that was very helpful. Yes.
Yeah. And so doing stuff like that also is just impressive. Like if you were to speak something specifically like that, like in an interview, it would let the interviewer know like, oh, wow, they're doing research. Like they're really passionate about it. That's something that I try to make a point is like, I subscribe to the podcast of the React team. Like I follow very closely the development of React. I've invested a lot of time into it because I believe that it's going to be around for a little while, and it's the best. My personal favorite JavaScript framework
Okay.
or library, I should say.
Yes.
Angular and Vue are probably more like frameworks because they have some stuff out of the box like routing. But that's one thing I love about React is that it purely focuses on just UI. So they all their efforts is around manipulating the DOM and about UI, which I like. And then they leave the responsibility of like routing or Redux and all those other cool libraries to open source projects, right? And you just import them in.
Right, right. So
Just
there's
pros
more
and cons to both. But,
flexibility. There's more flexibility to use just the tools that you need for the project you have and to choose the right tools.
Mhm.
Yeah. So anyway, yes, I can
Yeah,
tell
sorry,
you're
I think we got sidetracked. Sorry, I digress.
passionate about React.
I digress. But yeah, so just being passionate about it goes a long way. And then one thing I wanted to mention is another thing that Andrew in one of his videos he mentions is he uses his word, his point called imagination. And what he talks about to this is in the interviewing process, you want to help the company imagine you in the future, their future with you. So anything from your projects or your past experience that you could like tailor to the resume, like the job posting and the things that they're looking for and the questions that you ask, you like, as if you can do the most to connect those, to bridge those for what they're looking for in your past experience and how they can envision you being a part of their team.
Right.
That's kind of high level stuff, but it's something that has helped me out in the interviewing process that I've focused on, and it's made a big difference.
Now, something that strikes me just based on what you've mentioned so far is that, like, one strategy that I might be getting wrong, like, people give a lot of advice, and I'm very glad that people are so willing to give advice and tips, but sometimes the advice contradicts. Someone said that if you get enough advice, it cancels itself out. Kind of. So, but based on what you've been saying, I mean, some people have told me I'm not applying to enough jobs. Like if I haven't gotten a job yet, I haven't been applying enough. I need to apply to more jobs. But other people, and it sounds like, I mean, that's what brings it to mind, is to basically focus your energies on specific jobs instead. Um, and it's like, I got to do just one or the other because I only have so much time and energy in a
Mhm.
day. So it's like, choose. So do I just like blank
Yeah,
the world with my resume,
yeah.
or do I,
Accidentally wired, yeah.
yeah, find a few companies that look like they're a good fit and research them more and put more effort into understanding what they are looking for and demonstrating that I'd be good for their team. And I mean, yeah, so that's they're like two
I
different
I
strategies.
think there's a balance in the force there, right? Where I think there are companies who, like specifically ones that ask for cover letters, who really want to know if you want to be a part of their organization right up front, right? But I think other companies are kind of just looking, just kind of like how we're looking, and they're casting their net really wide too with hiring an agency and stuff like that. So I think there's a healthy balance between both of those. I think you should apply to, of course, have some general understanding of what the job description looks like. Don't just apply it just to everything. That's something I wouldn't recommend. Like if you're not really passionate about like C++ or like some certain technologies or the culture or whatever it is, like at least have an idea. Like at least read the job description and then find at least a few of those points. You're like, yeah, I think that's nice. That resonates with me. If that happens, then apply, right? But don't just cold like start clicking apply to everything. And I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. Maybe. I mean, for me, I try not to do that. Maybe some people do and it works out for them because they just play the numbers game, you know, because for some people I've heard it takes them like hundreds of interviews, and then of those hundreds of interviews they get like 5, and then of those 5 they get like 2 offers. You know, I've seen posts like that. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
it didn't
yeah, the
happen for
numbers
me.
game.
You know, but the thing is like there's not a perfect science for this because we're dealing with people, right?
Right.
And everyone's different. Every organization is different. Sometimes the organizations don't even know what they're looking for. I've had that happen where I got really far into an interviewing process. I did really well, and it had like they wanted. I think they ended up discovering for themselves that they wanted more leadership experience,
Okay, so
and
they didn't
they're
even
looking
know
more
that
for a
right away.
management type of role rather than more of like a development slash, not like a 50-50. They're looking more for like someone who do 90% management, like 10% like coding stuff. But they discovered that for themselves
I see. Yeah.
through the interviewing process. And I was like one of the candidates that made it like the furthest. And yeah, it was unfortunate. I was really excited about it, but yeah, it ended up didn't really working out because they were looking for more management experience, I guess.
I
Um, but that that happens. No one's perfect. I don't hold a grudge or anything like that. Again, I take away. I stay positive and I take away from the things that I learned from that whole process, and that's something that we should focus on as we go and we do interviewing process, is take as much away from each one as possible.
Continuing learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's happened to me too, where I'd be in process of interviewing, and then they just made a decision as a company that instead of hiring a few junior developers, they're just going to pool all that budget and hire a high senior developer,
Yep.
and they're
Yep.
just making business decisions, and
Yep.
I'm a casualty.
And that's stuff that's totally out of your control. Yeah, exactly. So it's just like stuff like that happens, and it probably happens more frequently than we realize. But yeah, that there's stuff like that that's totally out of our control. There's a lot of stuff that we can control, but yeah, there's plenty of variables that we can't control at
Which
all.
is a really good reason not to take it personally.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
which is easier said than done, but it's just,
Yes.
yeah, it's just, you know what? And if you feel rejected and you feel down, just go ahead and cry. Just go home.
I think that's okay. It's therapeutic, right?
Yeah, go cry and eat some ice cream, and then just
Yeah.
back on the horse tomorrow. You know what?
Back to
Just
the grind. Yeah, exactly.
let yourself
Yeah.
feel bad.
No, I think that's good. I think it's okay. I think it's okay to be. We're all human, right? No one. I wouldn't say that I wasn't disappointed or got a little low at one point. But just give yourself some give yourself some love, man. Like, you're trying your best, right? Like, for me, like, as long as I know that I'm doing my best and I'm trying to learn as much as I can, like, that's all I can do, right? That's it. You can't offer anything more than that.
Right,
So as long as you're putting forth your best effort, like, you can be proud of yourself, right?
right. Um, yeah, and it's hard to keep going when you have I mean, especially when what you're really passionate about is coding, right?
Mhm.
You're passionate about coding and reading articles, and you really just, at least I really just want to get in there and start. So I'm really happy that I got this freelance gig,
Yeah,
because I
it's
was
an awesome
basically,
opportunity.
yeah, you can tell from my GitHub basically that as soon as the hiring freeze hit, and so I just lost all motivation. I was just like, oh man. Um, but now my GitHub's picking up again because I'm like, yes, I have something to work on.
Yeah. And
um,
that's another great point. I think, at least for me, when I've been through interviewing process, I look at GitHub profiles, and I don't necessarily look at like the number of contributions and stuff like that. But what I'm looking for is just like things that a project that looks useful and that's meaningful to the person, or is useful and people would use it, and they learn something from, right?
right.
Um, and I think yeah, like, so your project, that's an awesome opportunity. And so I would definitely like learn as much as possible and deliver value to people, because that's something that companies really want. Like, making an application that no one's going to use is less meaningful. If you make an application for someone, like, for that's something I was extremely grateful for, that I had that opportunity to work for that Voice of the Terminus project, is
Mm.
that I was delivering value to people. Hundreds of people were using it, and I was enjoying it myself, and I was learning. So, like, that's the best thing, is that because it doesn't feel like work, it feels like fun. It's like a fun
Yes.
project, right? And so those are the best types of projects, where it doesn't feel like a chore. It's like genuinely something that you're interested in, and you're learning something from, you're building your skills.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's something uh, someone pointed out. I'm really good. I say someone because I'm really good at remembering quotes and ideas, but not really who said them or where they came from.
Yeah.
But just saying, like, when you do something, find something that basically comes naturally to you.
Mhm.
Not naturally, like coding doesn't come naturally. It's hard work to figure things out and learn. But as you were saying, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like you're playing. It feels like you can stay up till 2 a.m. working on this and not even realize how much time has gone by, because it's just so much fun. Um,
Mhm.
and and it's going to be harder if that's not the case. Like, it's just going to be clawing the whole way and just pure willpower. So that's another thing to consider, I guess, if you're thinking about even getting into coding, is
Oh yes.
being able to try it out first before you take out a loan to go to a boot camp or something.
I 100% agree, because especially when it comes to front end technologies, it moves way fast, right? There's going to be a new shiny JavaScript framework or library in like a few years, probably, right? I mean,
Exactly.
there's already Next.js. There's all these other things that are still like right now happening. So that's one thing, especially if you're trying to get into front end development, is that you're going to have at least a thirst for knowledge and the desire to learn something new and be able to adapt and be comfortable in either learning it new on a job or on the side or in between jobs. Like that's just going to happen, because when it comes to back end technologies, they still change, but they change less frequently.
Right. Front end tech. So like it's
At
really
least as
nice.
of like the past 6, 7 years. Like, there's
Yeah, new
tons of
stuff
stuff
is
that
coming out all the time.
exploded. Yeah, tons of stuff.
Um,
So
so,
yeah,
so
so
like Twitter. So, well, one thing I'd like to point out is like I was really active on LinkedIn
mhm.
because I but recently I've realized that there's a whole nother crowd on Twitter where I mean that's where Dan Abramov and Kent C. Dodds and all these super passionate like the leaders of React and JavaScript world are actually tweeting like the new stuff that's coming out and discussing with each other. And even that article you sent me, he even quoted like Twitter conversations he
Yeah,
had.
yeah.
So yeah, that's been really nice getting into, just realizing that that's more where you get into the discussion that actual developers are having. Um, so that's been good for me. And I've met people who have gotten their job opportunities through friends they've made on Twitter as well. So
Mhm.
that was good to hear about too. But
Yeah, to speak to that point, like networking is another like part of the solution, right? Is like, so we just recently got a new developer in our team that we're super excited about, and we were going through the interviewing process, and one of the big things for us, like um, deciding to go through to take the next steps, was because I had worked with him previously with Accenture.
oh well,
So
that
like stuff like that. And so that was like through a job, but that stuff could also happen through LinkedIn. Like there's other people that I'm speaking to on LinkedIn who are kind of going through a tough spot that I'm trying to help. Like I knew some recruiters that I've worked with in the past when I lived in the Bay, and so I'm connecting with them and stuff like that. So I know like how much connections are valuable. So
yeah.
sharing that
Well,
helps.
and another thing is if like what if there's people like who are following you on Twitter or LinkedIn and they're like, whoa, this person would be a great fit for our company, but there's just no openings, you know?
Yep.
But if you stay active and then all of a sudden, like my husband has been working at Cox Automotive the last year and a half or however long it's been, and a couple companies just reached out to him. He hasn't been applying or anything, but they've been following him, and this opportunity opened up and
Yep.
they reached out to him. So it's one of those things
That's
where
awesome.
if you're active, opportunities might come to you as well. So
No,
uh,
I agree. Yeah, that's another piece to the puzzle.
yeah.
um, I think, let's see, there's another thing I want to talk about. Oh yeah. So, like, so during part of the interview, they usually um, give you some time to ask questions for them. And that's a very important time. That's a key time. That's like when you should have done your homework, where you should have researched what the CEO has said, not the CEO, but like something specific to the company that you're genuinely interested in and want to learn more about. And one of the questions that, again, Andrew, shout out to you, thanks, is an amazing question that is his favorite question in the interview is this: if you were to give me an offer and I were to accept it a year from now, what would I have done specifically that you would consider this hire to be a huge success? That question is like packaged perfectly, because it shows that you're really thinking about the future with the company and you're trying to establish an expectation. And from that question, you can be like, based off of their answer and response, be like, oh, that's awesome, because this experience, this project, or whatever it is, aligns perfectly with that. And so you can like really, again, further sell them on you. But
Yeah.
anyways, I've asked that question, and like the interviewers were like, that's an amazing question.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it shows that you're thinking a year in the future. It shows that you're thinking about still
Long
being
term.
a company for a year. That's one thing. another thing is it shows that you are interested in what they need and what they're looking for instead of just what you're looking for. So that's another thing. Um, yeah, that is a very good question.
Yeah.
I'm interested in looking at these
So
resources.
again, you have to go to Andrew's YouTube channel. It's amazing. I can't recommend him more.
Yeah,
He's doing
excellent.
an amazing coach for me.
Wow,
Um,
that's great. Well, is there anything else off the top of your head you can?
yeah, I know we've been talking for a while. Man, time flies.
It's good. It's good
um,
when time flies. It means something good is happening.
and we were we kind of went on a little bit of tangents here and there. I'm trying to go back to like when we were talking about the recruitment step, right? Either with HR, with an agency, and then sometimes you talk to the recruiting manager. Sometimes, which that typically happens more with like an agency, where like you usually have more someone you have someone that you initially contact someone, but there's someone who's more senior to them, but who has a deeper and longer term connection with the company, and sometimes you'll talk with them and they can, and I'm just pointing that out because sometimes you can ask, I guess, just deeper questions about the company from them. And then usually like after that, you'll be connected with some type of hiring manager. Um, and that's where you either get into like some technical questions, right?
Mm.
Or behavioral questions. And that's one thing that Andrew, again, doesn't like, because behavioral questions he feels is like, it's not as valuable, because you can't possibly judge someone what they're actually going to, the value that they're actually going to bring to a company off of these types of questions. But every single company asks them, and we kind of have to, my wife, she calls them star stories. Like she writes down the
Oh,
star stories for like questions like, tell me about a situation when you had some conflict with the coworker and how do you reach to resolve that type of question, right? So like there's those common questions that what I did initially was like I wrote these all out on a Word document and wrote down specific answers to each of them, right? So
mhm.
I think that helps, because more likely than not you're going to be asked a behavioral interview question at some point, most likely from the hiring manager. Um, and then also another thing that the hiring manager is looking for is not just behavioral. It's more high level, I guess, with the hiring manager. Depending on who it is, sometimes they have technical backgrounds, but they want to learn more about, tell me about yourself. That question, right? That's your elevator
I
pitch.
hate that question.
And
I hate it.
I
It's
know. But
so
Andrew,
general and
again,
open-ended. Just like
yes.
I could tell you my favorite color and my favorite
Yeah.
food. Like, what?
So Andrew, again, has an amazing video just on that. So
Great.
again, I'm going to get you all the links. But basically, it's something that you basically should show on your LinkedIn, like the about you section. That's your elevator pitch. It's like, hey, these are the things that I'm passionate about. These are the technologies that I've worked with, and I forgot what my LinkedIn profile, but like it took several iterations before I got down exactly what I wanted to say. But yeah, so that's a skill in of itself, is the elevator pitch, because you have like 30 seconds to a minute to like spill out all this information, right?
Unfortunately,
Um,
I think I go way over a minute when they ask that question. My problem is like,
Sometimes I do too, like 3 minutes. And I'm like, oh crap, I just spoke for a long time. Yeah. So yeah, so then so after that, sometimes you get in a panel interview where you're interviewing with multiple like engineers, and that's usually like where they ask like an algorithm type of question, right?
right.
Um, but sometimes that always happens. Sometimes like with my interview with Eastern Logic, I interviewed with the CTO, and he didn't ask me an algorithm question at all. He just knew, he was comfortable with hiring me based off of just the conversations I had about like the questions between Angular and React. And we also talked about like how you'd be able to scale web applications, and I talked about vertical and horizontal scaling and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So we talked about high level stuff, and he was comfortable enough to hire me. So I think those types of interviews are awesome. That was amazing, because I was like, I had planned, I was doing like leak code and hacker rank, and I was practicing all these algorithm questions, and I felt like I was ready to go. But then you didn't ask it all. I was like, oh man,
I was gonna tell
I can't
you.
complain, right? um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so the most useful type of algorithm questions that I've really appreciated when I've interviewed with companies is when they give me a question that is actually that they have actually encountered, or that is similar to what they are actually working with. So if they give me like I've been in interviews where they give me a data structure that looks like the type of stuff that their team is working on, and they tell me, filter some stuff out, or they give me some type of algorithm question, but I have the data right then and there, and then I'm able to solve it.
Yeah.
And those are more useful because those are more practical, more real than not.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say that the high level like Google questions are not useful, but for big tech companies like Google and Facebook, they really use that type of stuff because they typically do more of those complex type of problems with
Right.
the
They have a
corporation. So
lot
they're
of
looking
data to
for
work with.
people to solve those really difficult type of questions. But when you're interviewing with maybe like a smaller or a mid-sized company, typically they'll ask less harder questions. Maybe like a medium is probably the hardest question that I've been asked from, like, in terms of like leak code. I don't know if you've been on there, but they rank the questions. So like
Oh,
a medium type question is probably the hardest question that I've been asked, an algorithm question for like a small or medium sized company.
okay.
And yeah, so I think that if a company was kind of like smaller or bigger, I guess it depends on what they're doing. But typically, I feel like those really high level like prodigy questions are not as useful. But
Okay.
sometimes, who knows? Sometimes they'll just ask that just to see just what your thought process. And this is another point that I need to make, is that it is more important for you to explain your thought process with them, because again, you're showing your skills, you're showing your communication skills. They're envisioning you right now when you're doing this problem as if they went over to your computer desk and was asking you a question, or you went over to their computer desk and was working or pair programming, working through a question, right?
Right.
So this is like a perfect situation for you to really show yourself how you would collaborate with them. And so those technical interviews, the ones that I've done the best on, is when I don't go straight into the coding, but I first think about the problem, ask lots of questions, and try clarifying as much as possible what they're looking for me to do. And there's been plenty of times where I've made mistakes, but I was able to correct it and still go through the interviewing process. So again, the most important thing is communicating your thought process, and thinking out loud about everything and asking lots of questions.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, these have all been really awesome. I mean, this has
So
been great.
I think I'll leave it at that. I think
No,
we covered a lot,
yeah.
but
And then also just sharing the resources, that'll be super helpful too.
yeah,
And yeah, this has been a really good, very enlightening talk. I love it.
yeah,
It's
it's been
been
a
great,
pleasure.
great talking to you, Nathan. Yep.
Yeah, I think I love being a part of communities like the ones that you're building, where we're all sharing knowledge, we're all trying to grow together. I think that's what we need a part of, right? It doesn't matter if you have a college education or you're going through a boot camp or whatever it is. We all should just be like just working together and just getting better and focusing on that.
Yep.
So
Sharing your knowledge.
I really appreciate you talking with me, and just and the community that you're building. I think you're doing fabulous. I think you're doing an awesome job, and I really hope, soon you'll be able to land your dream job, and you'll get into the field and you'll just love it and just have an amazing time.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thanks for talking, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Martha.